Hello students, Mr. Lopez here with a really quick lesson. This one's going to be super duper quick, and I'm hoping to pop out a bunch more lessons that are essential stuff that you need to know, okay? So we're going to be getting into the small section that was chapter 6, but I'm just going to condense it into 4 slides, okay? 4 slides. Simple as that, okay? 4 slides on all you need to know about chapter 5, okay? Because everything else is extraneous, okay? But at least you should know when you graduate high school, you'll know this stuff, okay? So previously, students, we learned about supply, correct? And we also learned about demand. We learned how to graph supply, and we learned how to graph demand as well, right? And we learned what kind of things shift those things over. Now, economists, right? They get those two things together, and they form graphs in which evaluate both supply and demand at the same dang time, all right? And this is why they should do that, right? All right, here we go. So uh, when you graph supply and demand together, you get this right here. You get your demand curve, and remember, students, your demand curve will always be sloping downward, okay? It would always be sloping downward. Your supply curve, if you're the supplier, right, will always be sloping upwards, right? Because the more quantity that they want to sell, right, they want to make more money. So if it becomes more expensive, heck yeah, let's pop out more of the quantity so we can make more money, right? And for people in demand, they're like, yo, if that thing's super duper expensive, I don't want to buy that very many amount of quantity for that thing. So just remember, students, supply and demand always goes in an X, just like this, where your demand goes downwards and your supply goes upwards. That's one thing that you should at least know when graduating high school, especially if you're going to continue your education in college, because that is the basic things you'll have to know about economics, right? So economists, right, what they do is they graph supply curves together so that they can figure out what is the right amount of supply or quantity to supply, right? Because let's say you're the business, and remember, we did some profit maximization functions right before this unit, right? And we learned, oh my gosh, we figured out the right amount in order to make a bunch of money. However, you can't make that much money if people are not buying your products, right? So you can put out the proper amount in order for you to make the most money, but is it the right amount? Because you might have extra that are left over. They're not being sold, so you're not actually making that money. You might have produced the right amount to make your profit maximization, right? And to be most efficient with your workers, but is it actually meeting what people are demanding for that market? That's the thing. That's why economists have to evaluate both supply and demand together, right? So sometimes the quantity demanded does not meet supply, all right? And I'm going to show you the 2 scenarios that you need to know in order for that, okay? Here we go. So the first scenario is a surplus scenario, okay? So you might have heard the word surplus before, right? Surplus, essentially what it means is that it is extra products that have been produced, okay? So for this example, right, there is a burrito vendor, right? And here is the supply and demand curve for this burrito market, okay? So this is the quantity supplied for the burritos, and this is the quantity demanded for the burritos, right? So this burrito vendor, right, he sets his price, right, at $9 for each burrito, okay? Because he found out that's probably where it needs to be, right? And then he is also supplying 44 burritos because perhaps that person did a profit maximization function, right, on an Excel sheet and figured out, yo, we need to produce 44 in order for our marginal utility and everything to be maximized, right? So they produced 44 burritos at $9. However, the demand, right? The demand market, they're just like, I'm not really feeling 44 burritos. The demand for that burrito was probably at 4, maybe because of different factors that affect demand, right? Maybe there's this food scare about burritos, like Chipotle when they had their E. coli outbreak and nobody wanted to eat Chipotle anymore, right? Or their salmonella outbreak, or many other types of food illnesses that came out for burritos for Chipotle that year. So that brought the demand downward, right? So the demand for burritos, however, was 4. So this guy produced 44 burritos though, okay? So he's right over here, right? At $9, right? If at $9, he supplied 44 burritos. So he's up over here. This is where the supplier is producing right now. He's supplying at this specific spot on this demand curve. I mean, on the supply curve. But however, the people in demand, this entire market, right? They only demand 4 burritos at the spot. So you see right here at $9. So what you do, students, in this case, is you look at $9 on the curve, and you see right here at $9, the demand is only 4 burritos. Okay, and then you go across over here at $9, the supplier is supplying 44 burritos. So what surplus is that this is a situation in which the quantity supplied, right, is greater than the quantity demanded at a given price. So at $9, the quantity supplied is at 44, which is greater than the quantity demanded at 4. So your surplus would be how many extra burritos that you have that went unsold, and that is 40 burritos because we get 44 minus 4. So if you were to shade in this little bowl right here, this little cup, this would be your surplus. All right, that's your surplus of burritos. That is all stuff that you could have made money on, but you didn't, or all of the stuff that went unsold, right? Sometimes, right, this is an aside, right, but you might find a surplus store, students, and that surplus store usually sells a bunch of stuff for cheap because this is all extra stuff that went unsold. So now that you know, surplus, right, means extra. All right, it is the extra stuff that went unsold. So right here, 40 burritos went unsold in this situation. Okay, so let's look at the other scenario though. Okay, so now we're looking at $3. Okay, so this burrito vendor now sets their price at $3 because they probably had too many extra, or let's say this is just a separate situation, right? So they're setting their price for the burritos at $3. Okay, at $3. So at let's look at $3 over here at this graph right here. So at $3, we can see over here that the quantity supplied is 12 burritos. So at $3, those burrito makers like, I'll supply 12 burritos, and then but if you move along the same line right here at $3, you can see that the quantity demanded though, the people said, heck yeah, at $3, I'll buy a lot more burritos. So the quantity demanded was 40 burritos at $3. However, you can see right here that there is still a big difference, right? People are demanding 40 burritos, but the supply is only 12. Okay, so this is a situation in which there is a shortage. So that means this is when the quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied at a given price. So at $3, right? Because you can't just say willy-nilly whenever. It has to be at a given price. So at $3, right, there is a shortage of burritos. There is a shortage of specifically 28 burritos in this case, because that means there are 28 burritos in which the people in demand, the consumers, are not getting. All right, and that means as well 28 burritos that you could have made and made money on. So you have to bounce back and forth, right? What is the perfect spot to be in, students? So you probably see, okay, so we have our surplus, we had too many, and or demand was not met, right? And then right here as well, demand is not met because there's a shortage, right? So they're both bad situations. Somebody's losing, somebody's not making money, right? So in this case, they could have made more money in the shortage because they could have made more burritos, but they didn't, right? And then over here, they didn't make enough money because they had it too high that not enough people were buying the stuff. So if you were a business owner, students, if you plan on becoming a business owner in the future, it's important to know this stuff so that you can make the most money that you can, because you're not going to want to have a bunch of extra stuff that is never going to be sold, because then you just have that stuff forever, right? So what we want to look out for, students, is this, okay, students? So essentially, let's say, well, in this situation, right, if we were to go back here, the price at which both the supplier and the producer, right, or the supplier and the consumer are happy is at $5, because you can see over here, they both want about 25 of burritos, right? This is what we called the equilibrium, okay? So equilibrium is when supply and demand meet each other. So the quantity supplied is also equal to the quantity demanded at a given price. So right here, this is what equilibrium looks like. Right here in this smack dab, this little point in the middle of the graph. So that means there is no shortage and no surplus. That means it is the happy point. That is the place in which all economists want to make sure they find in any given market. Okay, we never want there to be a shortage, and we never want there to be a surplus, because they're both bad in both cases, right? And in the place that is the best for the economy, right? Whether we're talking about your business or whether we're talking about the United States of America and all the stuff that we produce, we want to make sure that we are absolutely efficient and that we meet everything in the equilibrium, okay? That is our quick lesson about Chapter 5, students. Those are pretty much the 4 slides. That sums it all up, students. Other than that, we would have just been playing around with different demand and supply shifters. You would have to been shifting both of them and telling me where is the equilibrium in that market. And that's what I would have to be doing with you students. But that's a little bit tough to do while everything's online. But anyways, hopefully you guys found this lesson really helpful. All you have to know is equilibrium. You should know shortage, so you should know that shortage is down below, always ends up below the equilibrium point, if you notice that. The shortage always ends up below here, and when you have a surplus, it always ends up above the equilibrium point. So you should know that there is always a surplus when you're up over here, alright, and there's always a shortage down over here. But when you're right here in this spot, equilibrium, where supply meets demand, it is the perfect spot in which you want to be. Alright, perfect. Great little lesson for you all, and hopefully you learned a thing or two. I'll be spitting out some more quick lessons for you guys to make sure that you know before you graduate high school. Good luck.